everyone, and welcome to the Kectil World Youth Network. We have a very new podcast and new speaker this week with us. We have with us Nabila Abbas, a young social activist from Pakistan and a very important person in the Kectil family. She's also a board member at Kectil, and today she's with us to discuss a very poignant topic about women of Pakistan, opportunities and challenges that make their lives in this country. Influencing the lives of women and girls through various interventions, especially through education, is something that is very close to the heart for Nabila. And I'm very, very happy to host Nabila today. Welcome, Nabila, to the Kectil World Youth Network podcast.
Hello, thank you so much, Ashwati, for such a wonderful introduction.
Yes. So, Nabila, listeners here would be very eager to know more about your background and your work area, especially. So, can you please give us a brief detail and like an overall idea on your work, your expertise, and your life so far?
Sure, thank you so much. So, my name is Nabila Abbas. As you have heard, I am 26 years old. Now, currently, I am the first generation in my family attaining higher degree education from one of the biggest city, Lahore, in Pakistan. And my bachelor was in aviation management. And in my background, it is like very humble and modest because I am purely coming from a rural, remote area, which is southern area in Pakistan. And there I have my hometown in Choti Zareen district, Dera Ghazi Khan. So I'm purely coming from a rural area. And after my graduation, I came back to my own community because during my undergraduation program, I was strongly working with some international organizations on rural women and girls' rights and some, educational projects. So from there, I had this determination to always getting back to my community and to serve my community. My main expertise now lies in rural women and their rights, and we initiate some projects with different international organizations across the world. And main programs are basically, are mainly in education field. For example, giving them digital skills, basic educational programs for those children who are unable to have equal access to education, and digital inclusion inclusively, including both men and women in such rural areas. So this is like a very, brief introduction of myself, that what I am doing and how I am doing this.
Thank you so much. So Nabila was a delegate at the Kectil International Youth Leadership Conference in Atlanta in 2023. And that is also where I had met Nabila for the very first time, and we're very, very good friends. So in order to understand Nabila, you also have to know her family story. I've heard from her and I've heard her influence her family, especially her father, who has made a huge impact in the area of education in Pakistan. So I'm very proud of Nabila. I'm very, very proud of her whole family story. And today, can you please share or shine some light on your family story? I know it is very unique, and I would like to know have all the listeners know about that too.
Yeah, of course. Ashwati and I, we are good friends, and it was a good time in Atlanta, and a very powerful conference we had. In terms of my family, I would say from both sides, my father and my mother, they had never been to any university or college, hardly to the schools. And my father, in my father's family, my father is also the first person who is an educated person. His passion started for the education, and he migrated to another city from his hometown. It is hardly 30 kilometers away from his hometown to the current city he is residing now, and the current city where he opened the first ever school and laid the foundation of education in this area. In 1989, he initiated a school. It was a kind of foundation at that time, a kind of non-profit foundation, an initiative to introduce the term education and to encourage people to send their children to schools instead of sitting at home. And interestingly, in that era, it was not like only girls were not going to school. It was a same condition for both of the genders, like boys and girls, they were not going to schools and they did not have much facilities to attend a school in that era. So that initiative was for both of the genders at that time. And slowly and timely, people got, determined and they got familiar with this term education and they started sending their children to the schools. And even my father asked them to send their children with no cost at all. And there were a group of teachers, a group of male teachers, like his friends, some of his friends and other companions who started this initiative, and they were like spending volunteer hours to teach these children. This is how he started his campaign. And now, after 30 years, I compare things. It is like very different. Now we have a very well-established school in this rural setting, like the first ever kind of non-profit private school, which offers extraordinary curriculum. Like we are competing with international standards as well. We are teaching our children Oxford curriculum at the moment, and we have early education system as well, which is also one of the first initiative ever in this area. Because usually in rural areas, if people send their children to educational institutes in schools, they send them very late. It is like a very normal trend here in rural areas, both for the girls and boys. They send them very late, at a very late age, like after 6, 7 years or 8 years. So we also introduced this concept of early education, like starting from 4+ years and 5+ years. And currently we have like 80+ students solely in this early education system, like each year as a section. So this is a huge success, I would say. And in terms of infrastructure, we also had improved a lot. Like it is a very well-established school with huge playgrounds and other facilities. So, and interestingly, I would like to highlight that in my childhood, like when I was at the age of getting primary education, I also started from my father's initiative. Like I was not being sent to a formal school. Rather, I was a part of this initiative, a part of, this group of volunteers of my fathers who started this initiative. So I used to sit there to get my primary education from standard, you would say like grade 1 to onward, the basic primary education system till grade 5th. I had been studying in that school. So it was not a formal school at that time, but it was a registered school at that time. So I'm also the student of one of those schools. And when I came back after 4 years, completing my graduation from Lahore, Pakistan, now I see a huge difference to this school, to this initiative. And that is why it was my motivation to serve in this school and to take over, educational activities, to take an extra privilege of this institute, to align my other activities as well. So my father had been a great, personality in my life throughout my childhood and then teenage and then, my career life as well. So I see him as my first inspiration, I would say. Like he was and he is the first person to whom I look up to as an inspiration. And I would also highlight that my father have always been encouraging girls' education. We are like 4 sisters, and we are first in rank, 4 sisters, and then we have brothers. So he had always been pushing us to get education first and then other activities. But still in this area, in rural areas of Pakistan, which is very common, usually people do not send their girls to schools because it is not much appreciated. However, my fathers had encouraged people to send their girls to schools. Even he usually asked them that I would give you all the free access, but the girls especially. Like whatever in my capacity I can do, please bring your girls, your daughters to the schools so that we can, increase their enrollment as well. So yeah, this is like a big inspiration for me since childhood till now. And that is why it is my main motivation to always work for my own community. And I think my father's initiative has always given me a privilege.
beautiful. This is called the circle of life. So from being influenced, you are now the influence that is going to shape the future of Pakistan, especially in the area of education. And so I can understand these experiences, and you've seen this from your childhood, right? And that has shaped and made the strong and very influential person that Nabila is today. And I'm not saying this as a friend, but I'm also saying this as a youth who has met other inspirational youth in the Kektil Forum. And Kektil is a place that has been created for this purpose alone, to bring together youth from around the world, to listen to their stories, to be influenced and to get inspired by other strong youth from across the world. And for me, Nabila has been one of those young people whom I've had the privilege of meeting in person as well as understanding. And today, listeners, you're having the privilege of getting that pure inspiration from this person that Nabila is. And I'm very sure once you get to know her and once you get to know all the things and vision that she has in life, it's going to probably change your life for good. And Nabila, coming to the topic that we intend to focus on today, can you share your perspectives over the lifestyle, and everyday challenges and opportunities that you see around you as a woman, especially as a woman from Pakistan? And now, while you were talking about your family story and the initiatives that you've been part of, you mentioned about rural Pakistan, and I'm pretty sure there is stark differences that you've seen between the same lifestyle, life, and even the opportunities that women get in terms of rural versus urban Pakistan. Can you give us your insights on that?
Yeah, sure. And you are very right about it. Like, there are two separate windows of women's life in Pakistan. Like, and it is purely also been, statistically accurate as well, that women's population in Pakistan is like 50% women. And among these 50% women, we have estimated, like it is a rough estimate, 31% women lives in rural areas. And also because Pakistan is an agricultural country, and it's 60 to 65% population lives in rural areas. So yeah, like we have two perspectives of women in Pakistan, and we have two different problems of women in Pakistan. There's a one woman who is living in urban area, in urban setting. She has different problems. She has different level of prosperities and opportunities. And there is an other woman who is living in another side of Pakistan in rural areas, and she has some different problems and, different deprivations and challenges she has been facing in her life. For example, because 31% is a huge statistic, and they can contribute huge in Pakistan if given such, opportunities and access on equality. However, unfortunately, it is not happening because in rural areas, women have a different lifestyles. Like they are purely engaged in agricultural course. They are doing in their fields. Of course, they do field work, but they are doing in agricultural side. And they have less access to education first. Literacy rate in Pakistan for female is 40%. And like overall, it is 40%, which is very low. Of course, it is a very low statistic for a country to have an educational literacy. So in rural areas, there is no equal access to education, health, reproductive health for women especially. And they are purely either doing some agricultural course in the field, or they are, just living in their homes as housewives and doing some domestic course. And early marriage, that is why there's a birth of early marriage from this perspective, because in rural areas, early age marriage is very common. So a rural woman has nothing to do other than these things, like 2 to 3, 4 simple elements they have in their lives. And in urban setting, women, of course, they are striving to become more independent, and they are like they are like emerging as a working woman in Pakistan, but still they have not equal opportunities in working places as well. So they also facing some deprivations in their, perspective. So this is a huge difference, 31% and the remaining in urban areas. So 31%, if they are equally been participating into economic, social, and political activities and affairs, then I can see a different Pakistan. You can also imagine with me, like if these 31 rural women are giving equal access to health, education. So yeah, this can turn a very different Pakistan, because women participation is very, very important in any country. Even our founder of Pakistan, like Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, has also emphasized on the equal participation of women in politics, in socio and economic affairs. And that is why he laid the foundation of Pakistan by saying his famous quotation that without participation of women parallel to men, this country would not be a prosperous country. So you see how important it is. However, demographically, I would say it might become an underprivileged thing for us, because demographically we have like two layers of Pakistan and women in, two different windows. So yeah, accessibility is the point for women especially, because if your demography is very diverse and very different and you have huge of the population living in rural areas, then of course I believe that policies and government should be emphasizing on accessibility for those women as well in every aspects of life, education, health, whatever like it is. So it is all about demography perspective as well, and the lifestyles of women as well.
Thanks for the answer, Abuba. And now I want to take you back to your school days. Now, you've given me an idea of the present condition of women in urban versus rural and how was their lifestyle. But can you tell me, how was it growing up in Pakistan? And I'm taking you back in years. And can you maybe contrast it with how was it for a young girl growing up in Pakistan today? How would it be? How would it be different from the time that you grew up in?
Yes, for a teenage girl, I think it is not like, I would say like it is not a good dream to be a girl here in Pakistan, because girls are facing a lot of problems in their lives. Again, like if we see, because rural population is huge as compared to urban population, so literacy rate in rural areas is very, very low for female. It is very low. Even in rural areas, schools, the primary schools, the government primary schools are very less in numbers. And if there are some primary or secondary schools, like government schools in rural areas, the girls are not able to continue their education because, for example, these schools allows them to have education from grade 1 to 5 and onward. There is no education system for them, even in government schools. So you see how drastic it is for a teenage girl. For example, if a rural girl had this dream to get her secondary education and then post-secondary education, I think if the basic primary education is not allowing her to go further, then she is not able to fulfill her dream. So that is why in my childhood, I also had faced this problem, because as I mentioned before, in my era, like in my childhood, there was not even a single school for girls in my area. It was fortunately my father's initiative that is why I was able to step in to education system. So it is not story of it is the story of a lot of others who were girls who might have this dream of getting education, but lack of accessibility is not allowing them to fulfill their dreams. And presently as well, if I see around, because presently I also came back to my community, as I mentioned, and I'm closely working in some rural areas. So if I look around, still we have a lack of accessibility of education for girls to different schools. Even though there are some government institutions, but they do not allow them further either pre-secondary or post-secondary education. So yeah, unfortunately, it is happening, and currently the condition is not that much good. So it all starts with your basic facilities, with your basic, policies, whatever you have made for the women and for the girls. If you have not that equal accessibility and opportunities, then I think most of the girls are left behind because of these reasons. If they want to go to schools, but if they do not have those opportunities and accessibility, then it does not make sense for them as well. And also because in Pakistan, mostly it is very, very common practice that people are not much interested or they do not tend to spend much money on the upbringing of a girl, like whatever cost or whatever facilities or opportunities she should have. So most of the time, it is a resistance by the guardians as well. It's not about government and policies, but by the guardians as well. They do not send them to the schools.
So this resistance and as well as the lack of access to the infrastructures, is this prevalent? I mean, I'm just clarifying and diving back to the same answer that you gave me. Is this prevalent in rural Pakistan, or is it also something that you would observe in urban Pakistan?
But it is much more prevalent in rural areas. Like in urban areas, girls have much more better opportunities as compared to rural girls.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, in the context of urban Pakistan, how is Pakistan as a country setting up their infrastructure or facilities for young girls for a better or bright future in this country? I'm talking about in any policies or any sort of things that the country is doing, which is helping the urban girls in Pakistan. I'm not talking about the rural girls. I'm talking about the urban girls right now.
Yeah, I would say like for the urban girls as well, there are no as such special policies. You can say like well highlighted or special policies being made or created for the women and girls, especially because we have very less numbers of government schools, both in urban and rural areas. Like Pakistan's current population is 220 million. So it is a huge population. And if we see around like primary and secondary schools for both girls, for girls especially, like primary and secondary schools, even in urban areas, are very less in numbers as compared to current population's demands and need of the hour. Yeah, it is like very less in numbers. Because mostly in Pakistan, what is prevailing mostly is the private schooling system, which is very expensive, and I'm sure not for only rurals, but the urban girls as well. People are not able to afford these kind of education system. So mostly majority, they are relying on government education system for their girls. So yeah, like in Pakistan, the private schooling system is very relevant, and it is like very expensive. I don't think so like it is affordable to all of the population in Pakistan. The government is taking initiative to increase their government schooling and infrastructure. But however, we have not yet seen any improvements in this area as well.
Okay. Now, when we talk about education, naturally, the next question that comes up to our mind is about career. So, how is the girl's future? Like, is it widely encouraged for women to take up careers, or does it take a lot of hardship for a woman to join the workforce in Pakistan?
Yes, as when it comes to a career for a girl, for a woman, of course, it is very hard, a very difficult task to be a woman in Pakistan as well, because we have very, less opportunities to see our career in some, fields. Most of the fields are very, very male dominant. And if a woman by chance is going to those, field works or field areas, we have not seen much good results. Or much encouragements, because Pakistan geographically and demographically, Pakistan is a very male dominant society, and most of the things are being held and done by male. Even it is starting from their households and their home styles. So yeah, it is very difficult for girls and women to pursue some of the noble careers. Of course, a lot of girls have always these dreams to become even to an astronaut, to become a pilot, to become an engineer. But still, even in this current era, these kind of fields are seen for the male. And these are like a rare dream for women if you are living in Pakistan. But we have, very rare and good examples of women stepping into these fields. And civil servant exam is one of, those exams in Pakistan which can fulfill your dreams despite of gender, differences and disparities. So yes, you have, such kind of rare opportunities where you can go and fulfill your dreams despite these gender differences. However, not like the whole population 220 can go and enroll for the CSS exam, civil servant exam. Still, we should have some, other opportunities and some other ways of stepping into some different fields in Pakistan. Even in government job field, though like women have quota system, like they have reserved seats, but like these are very, less seats for them reserved in the government institutions to pursue their careers. So yeah, like we can hope for improvement, but I would not say that at the moment we are a progressing women-centered country.
So in India, especially among the workforce, I've seen that working women always have trouble handling it all because, women are always also expected to take care of the family. And India or Indian women have not been able to break off from that mold. Most of them have this disparity that happens in the domestic area where they might be good at their work. They might be a good addition to the workforce, but they still have to handle it all back home as well. So in that context, from women around you, what have you seen? Can you tell me if a woman is able to have a good work-life balance or handle it all if the person is a working woman in Pakistan?
Yeah, like majority Asian countries, and when also it comes to Pakistan as well, woman is always seen as a traditional symbol. I hope you also would agree with me, like women is seen as a traditional symbol. So because majority Asian countries are male dominant and our upbringings are being taken in this way that we always have seen male as a head guardian of the house. And we are always looking to him like what next we should pursue or what next this household would be going on in what ways. So I think this thing starts from like each and every home. And that is why when we go to home, workplaces, it is same as well there as well. If some women are taking over the workplace, like for example, they are the CEO or the supervisors, there's a resistance to see a woman in those positions. It is very much clear. I would just like to share my own experience that back a few months ago, I just took over and I just started working in a private institution as my job field. So I would say like I did not have a good experience at all because in the workplace, women does not have equal opportunities and accessibility, and they are not seen in some supervisory level or in charge of something. So it is always a resistance in Pakistan as well, in urban areas especially, because in urban areas, working places are growing rapidly and women participation, of course, is also growing rapidly. But the work-life balance is very hard for a woman in Pakistan, especially like you are from an Asian region. So it is very, very hard. It has not been a common thing, a common practice. It has always been a hard thing to prove yourself as a woman, both at home as well as at work. And also, there were a time when a lot of domestic violence were reported by the working women, especially. Like rural side is something else, but it was surprisingly like a very shocking thing that majority working women were reporting these things like domestic violence. And the reasons were, of course, imbalance of work-home life. Yeah. So these things have been happening very shockingly in Pakistan in the past few years. We have some, reports and surveys, UN Women Asian reports, which has been specifically working on these things like domestic violence reported by working women in Pakistan. And those, like, what were the causes? These were like the causes like imbalance of work, home life. And because male does not see the woman as a superior in all these elements. So yeah, it is very hard. You will always feel resistance. It has never been a common practice.
Okay. So I want to ask you to elaborate a little bit more on the area of the domestic violence issue that you just raised. Especially, my question is about how is it seen in Pakistan and in the social hierarchy or the family hierarchy that you see in Pakistan. I mean, is it looked down upon, or is it something that nobody wants to, handle? Like nobody wants to delve into. So is that also a reason why domestic violence does not get the attention that it should get and not getting, removed from the society's weave? Is that something that you see around you?
Yeah, it is a very much prevailing element in Pakistan. It has never been minimized or been eradicated from the societies. It has been always growing rapidly, timely, and presently as well. I would say that societies are being made by humans themselves. And because Pakistan is a male-dominant society, so society in society, male has a very huge role. And why domestic violence is prevalence, I would say that might be it is our fault as well, because we are not upbringing right men in the society. In Pakistan, woman is seen as a symbol of respect. Like if you see the creation and foundation of Pakistan, woman has always been seen as a symbol of respect, traditionally, religiously, and even our founder has also been emphasizing on this thing. But in Pakistan, woman has always been a vulnerable, human in this planet and in this, country as well. Why? Because male dominancy is one of the cause of, all these things. So what I would say that upbringing of a right man, upbringing of a good man is very important in our societies. If we are not able to change them, then we would not be able to change these things. Because how domestic violence is being produced, of course, there is there is someone behind that, and who is behind that? A male practicing violence against a woman. So it is a war, among these two genders, and one is victim, and the other is you can say the practitioner who is doing this. So upbringing of men is very important. And that is why I always emphasize on, upbringing a good son, a good man. And this would be, possible when we would be inclusively including men in our women empowerment campaigns as well. So teaching them would be a right thing to eradicate domestic violence from the society. Otherwise, we would not be able to do so.
You have raised such a beautiful point, Shabina. That is something that people don't actually look at in this perspective, and I'm very happy that you raised this perspective. It's also about bringing up good boys and making them good men for the future, right? And in a way, that power lies within the family, probably even lies within the mother's reach in order to make good men for the next generation. Such a good point, Nabila. I'm so happy that you raised that. And while we are on the topic of domestic violence, there was this story of honor killing that had caught my attention. And if possible, can you please take the listeners through that very murky side of domestic violence and things that probably people don't know about, what might be happening, and probably those stories are not reaching the world that much.
Yeah. I would like to highlight a 2016 amendment to the criminal law in Pakistan defined murder committed in the name of honor as a specific crime with stiffer penalties than homicide, including the death penalty or life imprisonment. But rights groups say the stricter laws have failed to curb the number of killings, because one of the main reasons that why we are unable to stop honor killing despite these strict laws by the government of Pakistan. Even a death sentence is not stopping them. Is that because people think that this is their personal matter? So killing a woman in the name of honor is their, personal matter, and it is an honor for them. And such kind of, behavior and attitude is not changing things. For example, in rural areas, honor killing is more like prevalent because in rural areas, a woman is purely a traditional woman. She is not going out of the home. She is not practicing anything, like she is not participating in socio-economic activities or even in any social circle or social affairs. So she is purely seen as a traditional woman, a woman who should be inside the home. And other than that, their guardian or the male, are not going to bear any of her activities other than these, things are out of this circle. So in rural areas, woman's circle is very, very much clear and defined. If she is coming out of that circle, so any male can name anything out of, honor, out of, that dignity of women, and he can, kill a woman. And this has been happening in Pakistan. Whatever cases we have seen, like you would always see very minor causes behind that. Causes behind that. For example, a brother is killing his sister. Why? Because she stepped out of the home and she had this dream to get education, and she had this dream to become an entrepreneur, or she has this dream to become whatever she wants, whatever dreams she has. So even though logically and by law, she has the right to practice all these things, but out of honor, like she has been killed. So yeah, this is like very common practice in Pakistan and even in urban areas as well. In urban areas, we have a different context of honor killing. In urban areas, mostly might be a working woman is struggling with her work and home life, and that has become a trigger point for the other person, the male, and might be that has become a cause to have this drastic and unfortunate incident honor killing. And these things have been reported in urban areas, like majority working women being suffering such things and such results and incidents because of the imbalance of work and life. But in rural areas, causes came from nowhere. Anything can be a trigger point, which is of course very, very unfortunate thing. Like even those things which does not make a sense, killing a woman for killing a woman. And I would say that even though a woman is right, wrong, or whatever she has with her life, no one has this right to kill a woman, and vice versa, but other gender as well. Yeah, and that should be a clear and very clear statement for humanity. But unfortunately, yes, domestic violence is an element in Pakistan.
And so is honor killing in very, very, although that is a very, very dark topic, this is, it's so courageous and brave of you, Nabila, to bring that up and be very candid about that such stories that are happening. So when we come back to a working woman, because I want to ask you about the financial independency of a woman and her likelihood of being a breadwinner in the family structure of Pakistan. So what's the place of woman in Pakistan society when it comes to financial independence and in that context?
Yeah, things have evolved very much from urban perspective, because there was a time when men were seen as the guardian and the sole bread earner of the whole family, and it was a very common practice, and it was being expected as well from a man as well. But now things have rapidly changed in urban context. Now it is very difficult to survive in this, world, and to, in this expensive world, because inflation in Pakistan is very much higher, and it has been always. So what I see shockingly in urban context, now even men also encourage women to go and earn parallel to them. So it is now becoming a very common practice in urban context. Like we have not seen much resistance in that way that no, women should be sitting only at home and they should not be going to earn or to be going to the workplaces. It has now been a common context, and even women also they are being encouraged by their male as well as they also had this determination to just go and earn and become independent. So in this way, if I compare like a decades ago, things have rapidly changed for a woman in this context. Okay. And it is now becoming a necessary element for the urban context that both men and women should be earning at this point and surviving together and raising their kids and their children and to maintain a good household system. So yes, it has been growing rapidly. It has been seen a very positive thing as well. And it has been causing, I would like to highlight this as well. It has been causing some mental issues as well among women, because most of the time might be they are tired of this routine and they do not want to pursue furthermore. But I have been meeting like few groups of women. From there, I have listened these stories that they are tired of this routine and they are no more ready to pursue their career. But whatsoever they are like, they have to do it for a good balance, like for a good financial balance.
Is that because they have to return back to kids waiting, cooking, cleaning, and all the domestic chores that are still not shared by the household and probably still falls on the woman's shoulders? Is that also a reason?
Yes, very true. It is also a reason.
Yeah, I mean that's a very relatable story here, at least. I mean, in the Indian subcontinent, we all are seeing the same thing. Women are getting their space to go out and work and make a mark in the in the world. But back home, everything is the same, and it's a double duty right now. So I can totally understand that. This is the same conversation that I hear in India as well. But in the global context, I've always heard about how there is disparity in salary and wages when it comes to women who does the same work but gets paid less. Is that also a case in Pakistan, or is that not much talked about? What is your opinion?
Yes, salary wage overall, like if keeping aside the two genders, salary wage is salary wage is a talk of the town, I would say. And salary wages are very modest, both for men and women. Surprisingly, in Pakistan, this is happening, because population is increasing drastically and we have very less opportunities in government sectors. You have fewer jobs, opportunities, and in privatization is one of the good thing which is taken over in Pakistan. You have more privatization and more private sectors in Pakistan as compared to government sectors. But in private sectors, there are some limitations, and of course, both men and women are struggling when it comes to salary and wages, and these ranges from a very modest level and never been to a huge number. So it is for both of the genders. Both of the genders are striving for a good salary, for a good wage in Pakistan, and it is the same condition for both of them. I would say that there is no discrimination in this way. And most probably men are struggling more.
Because traditionally they are required to be the breadwinners and they probably can't handle it all, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this is 2024 and, the age of modernization has been there for a very long time. But one thing that I've noticed I travel to a lot of countries and I've seen is modernization is not the same with each country. In each country's context, this word modernization holds a very different meaning. And even within a country, urban, rural, semi-urban, everything has very, very different and drastic difference in their level of modernization. Now, when it comes to Pakistan, and this word modernization, what does that mean for women? And especially this in this context, I want to know: are women digitally connected in Pakistan, or is it frowned upon? Is it something that people don't want women to be on social media websites and to be digitally connected? Is that something that's not appreciated much, or are women connected digitally enough?
Yes, digitalization in Pakistan, again, I would put two different perspectives from rural and urban. You would see like 31% women in rural areas, living in rural areas, they are not allowed to be on, digital platforms. There are two, contexts for rural women. Either they are not allowed, or they have no accessibility. I would come later on the accessibility, whether they should have the accessibility or not, or they have it. But the first thing, the early term is very much prevalent that they are not allowed to do so. So it is a norm. It is a common practice against women in rural areas that they should not be, on digital platforms. So like consent or permission by the male guardian. So also because in rural areas, the digitalization and accessibility is lacking, and it is a poor accessibility in rural areas. And for urban context, I would say women are they are digitally connected. They are rapidly coming on digital platforms. They are creating their accounts. They are handling businesses. They are becoming entrepreneurs. They are even becoming tech entrepreneurs. Like we have seen good examples from women, and they are smartly using digital platforms for their businesses as well. And they are both of their personal personality and their skills are very much visible on platforms, in such platforms and digital platforms. But for a rural woman, the world is very different. Like you can imagine, in my area, I am the first female activist who is publicly visible on social media, internet, and on some using these tech accessories and platforms and other opportunities. But still, most of the time, I also face cyberbullying, and I also face digital harassment, I would say, from the male group and male society. And I had been there was a time when I had been blocking my profile. Like I'm really thankful that Facebook had this tool and accessibility that now you can lock your profile. This should not be happening, because it is not a positive thing. You are locking your profile despite having a good public work and good practices, but still you are forced to lock your profile. But this is a reality, a harsh reality for a woman living in Pakistan, a rural woman especially, because you face a lot of backlash, then a lot of digital harassment. You have to balance your personal life as well. So most of the time, I also become very, very much careful that whatever I am posting, whatever I am saying, and how much my accessibility and visibility being shown on the internet. So I have to decide things according to tradition and norms being integrated in our system. Even though I do deny such things, but of course we have to balance sometimes for our safety, because your personal safety is very much important. So, and in urban context, I would not say that male society have become very much open-minded and they have been accepting women very easily. No, but we have been hearing a lot of honor killing cases in this context as well from urban setting.
Open setting.
Just because this woman had been crossing this limit and she had been using a lot of internet, a lot of she had a lot of visibility on the internet. Why she is doing so? Such minor objections becoming a huge cause for honor killing in urban context as well. But for the rural, demographically, I would say 31% rural women are not even visible on the internet. We had a few of the Facebook post statistics for our school ad, in which what I realized that majority, 99% male are the audience who is reading our ads, our school ads. For example, we have 5K to 7K followers at our page, in school page. And among those, we have 99% male using the internet and social media. Only 1% rarely women created accounts are seeing your ads, etc. And I believe those 1% women would also be in a fake IDs. So this is how you see, like, there is a huge difference when it comes to a digital world in Pakistan for women. So you again have two different frames, two different windows. And like one is most visible, urban, and the other, the one very, very less visible on the internet and other, digital platforms.
This is one thing I really, really, appreciate and respect about you, Nabila. The candid opinions that you give, as well as the most learned opinions. And I really appreciate how you bring in statistics, and you know exactly what's happening. And you as a person is also trying to bring that balance between what's the society's norm, as well as what is, what you feel as your own self integrity and what stands by your values. So hats off to you, and I'm so happy to have you amongst us and speak about these things. I just had to bring thank you for your candid words in between. I still have more questions, and one of the main things is a very different question. When we're talking about digitalization, when we're talking about the career, education, the wages, salary, all this brings to a point of something called women empowerment, right? And in at least in the context of global conversations, women empowerment has been a word that has been overused. People keep using that word for anything and everything. And sometimes I even wonder if the real meaning and the charm of that word has been lost. But one very sad reality is, when men, especially men and boys, hear this word women empowerment, they get a little endangered, they get a little insecure, and they don't like that word. So I would require your candid responses again on this topic. What is the mindset of boys and men in Pakistan towards this word women empowerment? How do they take it?
Been asking, in Pakistan, things are like very same. Women empowerment campaigns even have been attacked, and we have seen like very drastic and serious incident. For example, March is one of the women empowerment campaigns month in Pakistan, because it is like Women International Day as well in March, and that is why the whole month is being celebrated for women empowerment and for women's rights. And we have a very famous campaign, Aurat March. And I just don't want to criticize someone, but the main reason, I just want to tell you a few wrong practices and examples by women empowerment campaigns as well, which become a trigger point for the male society to think positive of our campaigns and our, causes. Aurat March has become famously and popularly a negative myth in Pakistan. And as a woman, I also agree on that. Because in this Aurat March campaign, most of the things and activities are very, very, ridiculous. And they are out of the context. They are like out of, practices, what women should be actually seeking. And that is why I believe such kind of campaigns have become bad examples for male society as well to underestimate our, rights and our, our awareness for the women empowerment. However, how we can handle this in a positive way would be inclusively including men in our campaigns. Majority, when we say women empowerment, we are like solely depending on the term woman, and we feel that because it is for the woman, So it should be for the woman only, and only women should be included in this context. No, it is about if we are seeking our, rights, and if we are seeking a woman to be empowered in a society, so male is also a important, character in our lives. He equally should be invited in these campaigns and equally being taught whatever, things we are doing and whatever a woman requires in a society to live a good life. When it comes to government context, I would say that Pakistan government and Pakistan creation has always been a respectful element towards women. It is all about societies, because societies are being created by humans, by us. And when I say by us, like we are two genders prominently. I would not deny other genders because it is another debate. I respect them as well. But prominently, two genders are living together and raising the society. So they equally must be given, importance. And for women empowerment, I believe, I would not blame male every time. Yeah. Sometimes our message is not being conveyed in a way it should be. So we should be very, very careful that what we are producing in the society and what we are teaching in the society. So if a message is good enough conveyed, I'm very much sure that our male brothers and our male, companions and friends would really be helpful in our lives to raise a good community and a good society. But of course, in Pakistan as well, women empowerment is not seen as a good element, and there is always a resistance. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, good point raised, Nabila, there. I mean, everyone should be involved in this journey. It's not just, because there is this word woman empowerment does not mean that it can be solely achieved by one section of the society striving very hard. Very good point that you have raised, Nabila. And on that note, another question that I had in my mind is about the ethnic minorities in Pakistan. And at the Kektal conference, I had the privilege of hearing about Pakistan as a country, as well as the various ethnicities that Pakistan and people of Pakistan make up that country. And can you tell me about the lives of women belonging to such ethnic minorities like Hindu, Christian, and Sikh in Pakistan? Maybe it is my lack of knowledge, or maybe I've not had enough exposure to understand. To understand about the substantial number of people who are non-Muslim practicing in Pakistan. I really thought actually earlier before the conference, I even thought there are no one in Pakistan who is a non-Muslim. But at least the knowledge that I gained from the conference has changed that perspective. But now I want to know about their lives, especially women from the ethnic minorities. How is it for them in terms of their job, their education, career opportunities, their life, and everything that you know, Nabila?
Yes, because Pakistan is purely a very religious country, Islamic country. So mainly its population is Muslims, like 96.47% are Muslims in Pakistan. Followed by 2.14% Hindus and 1.27% Christians. So minority global population is very, very rare and very less. But Pakistan government, since the creation of Pakistan, in Pakistan's each law, either it is about employment, justice, other opportunities and well-being of human in Pakistan, minorities has always given a priority. For example, in different government sectors, when there are some creation of jobs, placements, in ads, you would always see openly, there are some few quota and seat reserved for the minorities, both for men and women. So it is usually seen a very good practice in Pakistan by the government. And we have seen good examples, minorities, people coming forward in different government sectors. They are taking over and they have supervisory level positions as well. For example, in the last civil servant exams, we had a girl from minority. And yes, now she is like pleasantly serving in the government, one of the, prestigious government sector. And Pakistan's people as well, like the common people and the, government officials, see this as a good example and a common practice, and they encourage it. So we have seen a very, very, progressive and positive life for minority in Pakistan. But again, because Pakistan always had some, religious points and elements to make it as a trigger point to create any, backlashes or, clashes among themselves as common human, as common people. So some, drastic and bad incidents also had happened in the past, but government has always been strict in those, incidents, in those illegal and improper practices, and government have never been stepped back to giving penalty to those persons who are practicing such things. So government, policies and statement is very much clear against such things, and they make sure that ethnic and minority people should have a good life in Pakistan as equal to others. But of course, again, like societies are always raised by the common people. It is not always the government and policies which should telling us how to live our life. But of course, like it is always by ourselves as well, that how we should raise our children, how we should be living as human in our societies. So, and because religious element is a very sensitive element in Pakistan, and sometimes people take advantage of it in extra mile and in a negative perspective, and they use against of someone else, which is very wrong, for which neither our Islam has allowed us nor our government.
Okay. So again, and on the topic of government, I want to move on to a new area, that is government policies. And especially throughout this conversation, when we have touched upon education, the area of career, wages, domestic, practices, everything you brought together these interventions that the government has brought in. But I would want us to summarize that and shine light on any special government policies that the listeners should know about when in the area where the government is helping women of Pakistan.
Yes, like we have a separate commissionary on women's rights and well-being as well in Pakistan. But I don't remember if there are some special policies being made for women. Like it is common for both gender, for men and women. Even in political context as well. Still, for example, if I talk about parliament, in the parliament, in lower house, National Assembly, we have total seats 342, out of which only 60 seats are reserved for women. And in the Senate, which is the upper house of the parliament, we have 104 seats, out of which only 17 seats are reserved for women, which is of course a very, very less number if we want to inclusively see women politically participating in Pakistan progress. So from here, I can see a huge, difference of women participation. And that also make me sometimes ponder over word reserved for women. Like why we have this term reserved for women. This should be equally for both men and women, and on merit and on their capability, whosoever is able to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, this makes a sense. Still we are not progressing in that context. And again, even in the present, woman is still a vulnerable human creature in Pakistan, on the planet as well. The global context, other challenges. But in few different job placements and job creations, government sectors again have reserved seats and quota for women. But what I want to say that is that there should be some equity for both of genders. Sometimes women have extra privilege because they are women, And sometimes they are vulnerable again because they are women. And so there should be a fair and equitable treatment for women as well, despite of the gender. So in conclusion, like there is a normal life for a woman in Pakistan, like no such kind of special or innovative policies or campaigns for the women only. What special policies or law you would say we might have, like such kind of things, special anti-rape acts, criminal law acts for women, some sort of things. Like again, these are not good examples to highlight because they have a drastic background and context that why these special protection acts are being introduced for women.
Okay. Yeah. The need itself is not something that is positive, but ultimately those kind of things would ensure that vulnerability is reduced, right? So, Nabila, you've been a young influencer in the area of policies and governance. When you mentioned your social media, this is also one area that I have personally been able to understand about your activities and your level of influence. And I know you are a person who observes and has very, very strong opinions about things that are happening around you. So I am very interested to know about your observations on the area of Pakistan government. What can the government do better or focus more in order to make lives of women in Pakistan better? Now, you already have mentioned just before this about the reservation and your thoughts on special laws and acts that should be or can be enforced. So can you elaborate more on that? Is there something specifically that you've always wanted to see the government do in order to help women of Pakistan?
Yes, sure. I have some like very clear opinions on it. First of all, like the governance starts from political context, which is very important. And because now we are in a modern age, and I appreciate that a lot of already women are being, participating in politics, and we have good few sort of, rare examples, women coming in the politics and in governance. But still, I just want to eliminate this reserved for term for the women context in politics first, because if we have total seats either in National Assembly or Senate, it should be an equitable and fair treatment for both of the genders and whosoever win on merit and on their capacity and capability. So it should not be a concern whether it is a woman or a man, and it should not be taken as a reserved for women especially. So you see, the difference starts from here. If in the political and governance part element, if you are allowing women equally to participate in it, then you are making a huge difference in the world. Secondly, because Pakistan's demography is very rich, and it has two major prevalent contexts of rural and urban. And statistically, we still have 31% rural women stuck in a remote and rural lifestyle where they are not fully participating into social, economic, and political affairs. Yet, even in this 2024, these 31% rural women have not been visibly seen on any of the context, either socio-economic elements. So Pakistan's government needs to take it very seriously, and we have to understand this thing, and we should be very clear about it, that if we want to see women empowered in Pakistan, then we should be a pre-calculated person when we are making policies. We should not be blindly making policies for women empowerment and should giving those opportunities in urban areas only. Because if you want to see empowered women equally, then we should smartly work on these statistics. And we have to improve more accessibility, infrastructure opportunities for the rural women as well in, this remote setting. And thirdly, I would say that women should be treated as a fair gender. And we have to change our mindsets. And for that, I think men upbringing is very important, and government should have some inclusive policies, initiatives, and campaigns to uproot good men into society by enhancing more, campaigns for men, where they should invite men in different sort of, activities and campaigns. So yeah, men's role in society is very much important, and it is very much positive as well. It is not always a negative context when we talk about men. I see them a very potential, positive creature in this planet, in Pakistan as well. And I believe by changing them, we would automatically be able to sort a lot of things without even bothering women. And this is reality.
Wow. I'm telling you this with all my heart. I can see you can be, or you should be, the face of future Pakistan, and I can't wait to see the bigger things that you will achieve in your life, and go ahead and actually change the face of Pakistan. I really hope you are in that position one day. And you're already a role model to many women in Pakistan. You are already a role model to a lot of us in the Kettle Network. We all look up to you. And on that note, I want to know, who are some of the role models and impactful women in Pakistan whom young girls look up to, whom you have always looked up to?
Yeah, there are a lot of women I do appreciate. For example, I just would like to highlight one of the good example currently. Our former provincial minister, Sartaj Gul. She is a very strong lady. She is from my own district, my hometown where I'm living. And she had been a good candidate for the previous few years. And she stood and won election in the last government, not in the current government, because we are now stepping in the current government by tomorrow. So in the last government, she had been a minister of climate change department. So I always have seen her as a role model, because I believe she is very strong. She is very outspoken. She is very intellectual. And I would like to see a lot of, more women in the politics, just like her. And there are other good examples as well from bureaucrat field, Sasi Malik Sher and sisters. Mm-hmm. Those 4 sisters competed in the civil servant exam, and they all sisters cleared the attempt, and all 4 sisters are serving in different fields, in different government sectors, in different provinces. So you see, you have a lot of good examples, women empowered, jam-packed examples to see and set your role models. So yeah, I just want to see such examples, not as a rare examples, but as a common examples being practices in Pakistan. So I believe everyone should have this accessibility and should have this opportunity to become an independent woman.
Rare example to common example. Wow. I really, appreciate those words, Nabila. That's something that even I wish to see in India too. I don't want to be one of those, I don't want to be talking about rare examples and strong examples. I want to be, talking about common examples. So profound. I really am so happy that we're bringing those points up. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I am very curious to know about how is it to be a woman entrepreneur in Pakistan?
Yeah, we have good women entrepreneur examples in Pakistan as well, especially in urban settings. Mm-hmm. Women are running their own businesses in the fabric industry, in the fashion industry, and in the tech field as well. Now we have seen some good examples in the tech area as well, because previously it has always been women seeing in fashion industry, either in fabric industry, some sort of, tasks which are more relevant to women, but now they're coming out of those fields as well. They are becoming tech entrepreneur in Pakistan. For example, you might have heard Shamim Ubaid. She is in the tech industry, and she she is in the film industry as well.
Okay.
And she's making some remarkable and outstanding, you know, making outstanding journey on the global level as well. Yeah, she is from a journalist and filmmaker industry.
How about rural Pakistan? I mean, I know it is a very different context, but is there any sort of movements or initiatives that are helping women enter businesses in rural Pakistan?
Not that on much level, like usually seen in urban setting. Usually in rural areas, women are not emerging, like rarely emerging, but they have some, back-end businesses. For example, some traditional women are stitching clothes and they are making some, cloth designs, and like urban women are the ones who are helping them to take over their business to the urban industry. And but they are becoming a communication and becoming a channel for a communication to those women. But rural women are not seen as a visible, business creators or as an entrepreneur.
Got that. Okay, now this is going to be a very candid and personal, topic. I had actually, come to know about Pakistan or maybe familiarized myself with Pakistan through a very popular TV series that we see in India. There are quite a lot of television series, Pakistan series that are very popular in India. And that's where I have been able to see, snippets of Karachi and Islamabad. And whenever we see, urban women, they're almost always running businesses, having very flashy lives and being like powerful ladies in Karachi and Islamabad. Is that the case? Or, is that just a glorified version that we see in the television series?
Yes, like in Karachi and Islamabad, women is very independent and very modern. It is very true. In Karachi especially, like Karachi is whole another world of Pakistan. Even it is another world. It is very progressive. Of course, it has some drastic challenges as well, Karachi itself. But the women in Karachi have a glorious lives, you can say, because they are more independent. They are more tech entrepreneur. They are more into business. And they have more, good, opportunities as well, because once it has been said as Karachi is the city of lights, and it is very true. But Karachi also has some drastic infrastructure issues as well. It is another debate, like a very political, integrated debate. But yes, women are very independent
and glamorous too. All this TV series, I've always been, a big fan of content that comes from Pakistan, and I'm a very big fan. And Nabila, we get to personally know of your work and initiatives that you steer for empowering and building capacity for women in Pakistan. Now, through the introduction, through the beginning of our conversation, you've taken us through a lot of things that you've been part of, and a lot of initiatives that your family and your father has, created in order to change the lives of students and in the face of education in Pakistan. But can you, share to the listeners some of the most important work you've been doing in this area? And I know it is not just, conformed to this area of education, but your area of work or everyday, the things that you are actually bothered or concerned about, it is not just for women, but it transcends to a lot of topics. So can you share about that to the listeners?
Yes, sure. For the past few years, we had been introducing a program called Conversational English Language Program for the young rural girls. The background and the context of this program was to introduce rural girls to some communication skills and to give them capacity building opportunities and to set a curriculum. Even though it was named as a language program, we smartly did it because usually in rural areas, most of the social campaigns or social projects are not being seen as a positive example, or you face a lot of resistance to do so. So we kept this as a purely educational titled, and but in the curriculum, the important part was to create a smart curriculum where you should not only be teaching them a language skill, but to let them know about their rights as a human, and more opportunities they could get, more accessibility so that they can connect with the rest of the world as well. So this program was very, very important, and we've seen very, good results of it. And it was actually supported and affiliated by International Congress of Youth Voices, which is a US-based organization, which I am the former delegate as well in 2019. So for the past 2 to 3 years, we had been helping young rural girls to achieve their dreams through this program, and to connect them some different, scholarships further, so that they can continue their post-secondary education in a good manner. And then, because I'm also an alumna of Pakistan US Alumni Network, and through that platform also, I had been bringing back few of the projects. For example, last year we had done a great project on digital inclusion, on empowering rural communities, in which we initiated some, digital skills sets, opportunities for both young rural girls and men, for both men and women, boys and girls, young. So in that also we seen some good results, because it was a good practice to have both of the gender together in a one frame, and taught them few of the digital skills so that they can earn, like further they can connect with the industry, and they could earn and could have a soft skill in which they want to pursue further their career. And like this sort of some projects and programs which can long last, further connect them to pursue their career in different fields.
Okay, so when these programs are run, I want to know about any very important change that you have observed in the lives of people who are benefiting from this. Any story or some very good change that you have observed after such initiatives have been brought together by you?
Because through such programs, first they just get to know about more opportunities, because they live in a world where internet accessibility is not in their hands, for rural girls especially. So in such kind of programs, we actually give them this opportunity to explore the world as much as they can, and to connect them with some, different organizations, institutions, schools, colleges, so that they can pursue further their studies. One of the good examples I would quote here, I was surprised as well. One of my village girl is actually enrolled in 2024 Capital program. And
wow,
surprised. Like, how did she get the internet access? Because where I'm living right now, it is purely a remote area, and even the girls are not allowed to take a mobile, which is like very unusual. So I just texted her and just asked her whether she's safe and good, how she's feeling about it. And she just told me that since she enrolled in one of our program, Conversational English Language Program for young rural girls, in that 6-month program, she had a very good, experience. And then she talked to her family that she needs a mobile. She wants to connect with the internet because she wants to explore more opportunities, and she wants to become like me. And then she was actually following my, status maybe. And from there, she got to know that Capital 2024 call is open for the applicants. And I was so surprised that she once asked me that, okay, ma'am, is the program is open for applicant? I just told her, yes, it is. But do you have the internet to continue further for the program? What if you are accepted? She said, okay, I will see. But now I am determined to fill the application at least. I said, okay, yes, you should go for it. And let me know if you feel any problem. Either I can fill on behalf of you if you face any problem. She said, no, I will do it. I said, this is a very good thing. So you should do it. Like, it is a good self-work. And then she told me that she is accepted into the program. And I'm so like happy to see her progress and to see the way she is trying to make things accessible to her. I'm sure she had a good positive setting with her parents. Otherwise, because she's using the mobile and internet with the consent of her parents, and it is very important for rural girls because we don't want to create any trouble for them in the future. So I feel so good for her, and I was so like inspired by the communication skills she must would have because she convinced them. So like yeah, like for most of the girls in rural areas, it is like a dream to have the accessibility of such things. And in some other part of the world might be such things are very common for the girls. So this is how like lifestyles and life accessibility does matter a lot for most of the times to get a progressive person.
Yeah. This is a conversation I can keep going on and man, I'm just loving the flow in conversation. But now you've actually, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Have you brought to a point where I really have to ask you this question? Now there are a lot of people who are listening in right now, and mostly I'm hoping there are some Pakistani girls who are looking up to you as their role model and listening to all these stories and getting inspired by them, by your stories. So for them, this is especially for them. One last question from my side. You have traveled the world, you've been part of Tectel, you have come to Atlanta for the conference, you've been a US delegate for quite a lot of programs, you have represented the country at a lot of important forums. And this was all initiated by the sheer determination that you showed from your side, your intent to create that exposure for yourself, and your own willpower to actually move away from some sort of conformations that the society has enforced, but to actually create your own space in the world. I know you are going to achieve a lot more in life, but you have started that journey all by yourself. Now this is for girls especially listening in right now. I want you, Nabila, to tell them how important it is for them to actually step out and show the courage to change their life, and set themselves in your path, or actually to create that space for themselves in this world.
Thank you so much for such an appreciation. I truly adore you. For the young girls, young girls have always been very close to my heart because I want to see every young girl to be an independent, either financially or their personality, to be independent in this world. And it is very, very important because women parallel to men in this current modern era, it is not the necessity of the hour. So they should be modernization themselves and becoming more independent. I would say that the light is inside of you. You don't need to look for it to someone else or somewhere else. The light is inside of you. Your own sheer determination and passion matters the most. But whatever you want to do, just go for it. I know most of the time accessibility becomes an element where they might not get progressive. So, but we should not stop here as well. As much as we can, we should be trying for some equal opportunities for ourselves. And education is one of the main priority that should be for the girls, because education can transform you in a way where if you compare yourselves in back some years, you would feel yourself a changed person. So education accessibility for young girls must be available in every country, not only in Pakistan. So from where actually we can start making a difference. So sending our daughters to schools is very, very important. And yes, if every mother is listening to this as well, so this is for them as well, not for only for the young girls, but for the guardians as well, because guardians are the ones who are the decision makers right now. And if they would make good decisions for their daughters today, they would see good results in the future.
We are ending on such a high note. Thanks a lot, Nabila, for sharing your voice on behalf of women of Pakistan. And we are absolutely proud of you. I am proud of you. I'm personally so proud of you and eagerly looking forward to more and more impactful work you will do to create a change in the society around you. And I'm very sure your journey has just started and I'm waiting to see more. And we're very sure you would be one of those role models that young girls of future Pakistan would proclaim proud and loud. So thanks a lot for listening in, everyone. We come with insightful stories of youth around the world every fortnight at the Kettle World Youth Network. Bye-bye.